it going, friends? It's Joshua D. Fucker, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we are going to be covering and ranking all 5 of the cheaper by the dozen adaptations from my least favorite to my favorite. But before we begin, make sure to comment down below your favorites and how you would rank this franchise from the 1950s to this latest Disney Plus edition. Make sure to like this video and subscribe, help the algorithm out. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know other videos and suggestions down in the comments below. And starting in with that place, we unfortunately have the latest Disney Plus version of Cheaper by the Dozen. This is a film that tries to go by its own means, going to its own adaptation, while having a very loose telling of the original story that's sort of based on a real story written by this one author. And so it tries to include all these ideas about diversity and racism and diving into those subjects while still balancing some of the general ideas and subjects of how hard it can be with this family of 12. And yet it becomes even more of its own story because the parents are both from divorced sides, and so all of the dozen kids aren't from one family directly. They just happen to be adopted into this one family through this marriage. But there's really odd social dynamics between their ex-wives and ex-husbands still being involved with the movie, being involved with the family to show everything's fine when things aren't still working out. And so I could hardly believe some of the relationships we get from this new couple, as well as how this family is becoming together. It feels like it's very modernized to just look for cultural appropriation, where the adults are even using Gen Z terms all the time. And so it feels very odd and forced with how the story flows out in an unnatural way. Coming in at number 4, we have Bells on Her Toes. Now, this was a film that I did not expect just as one of the original, because I watched the 2000s versions first, and so it misconstrued my vision of this, but I still came to understand what they were going for, and based on what the actual sequel of this real events sort of were based off of, where now the husband has passed and now the mother is taking the family to her own means, having to raise these children. And so we're introduced sort of the kids all grown up and the mother going to the final kid's graduation. Then it goes to a flashback, which goes about this interesting story with how the mother is raising the kids and the difficulties all surrounding that, which becomes a little bit of a disadvantage with Clifton being gone from the table, which I really enjoyed from the first film. But being of its own story, it's really fine as it is. It's just not a story that really stuck out to me and is really going to stick out to me, that I may be watching this again because I really appreciate the style of the story and how good it is by its own means, but personally didn't connect. But coming in with number 3, we have Cheaper by the Dozen 2. Now, this is a film that sort of goes a cliche sort of family-to-family duel, where the dozen family is basically going against this other family. They happen to go on this summer vacation and go on a feud against them with these other people as well around the camp. And of course, you get the stereotypical look at these two families going against each other, and it's lesser of what actually happened on the sequel than what you get in Bells on Their Toes. And so it's really odd, and it still can be fun by its own means, and how they go about with some of the jokes. Steve Martin, Bonnie Hunt really adding some chemistry, but it feels less of a strict family dynamic where you're sort of going through some of the same beats that we have gone through before in the previous movie. And coming in with a close second, number 2, we have Cheaper by the Dozen, the original 1950 version. This is a fun drama. It's such a different feel since it's not so much of a comedy, but it still has those comedic efforts and the strict fundamental views of the father really taking control. And I really do enjoy this older style that creates a different approach and probably more realistic approach to what the book is about based on these events. And I highly enjoy for what the effort was with Clifton as the father especially, and the sort of jokes that go on that. What puts this back just a little bit more is just the way it sort of goes on these random tangents of other events that don't seem to correspond so well with the story itself. And maybe that's just how the book flows. We haven't gotten into that and how some of the events goes. It's just sort of a life-telling story that I kind of enjoy. It just sets it back just a tiny bit from my number one. And that number one is Cheaper by the Dozen, 2003. I highly enjoyed this for what it's going for. This is the first time I experienced this last week, and I just loved the comedic approach. It was a late time watching, and I got a few more laughs than I wanted to, that I expected to, and the approach to it was rather well directed, and the shots were surprising for a Disney Channel movie that just really stood out. And just the fundamental values of the father again really stuck out to where it was kind of upsetting just watching some of it go about, just because he could be so strict at sometimes. But it kind of was a good thing by the story's mean, because this is how it was sort of playing out the same way the 1950s version flowed. And the relationships were a lot more believable, and somehow Steve Martin and Bonnie Hunt really created a strong chemistry that we didn't quite get in any of the other filmed adaptations, that really made their chemistry connect to where you could almost believe this was a real type of family, and just the way that you interacted with the kids and the equal division of time spent on screen. So that's just my ranking of all 5 Cheaper by the Dozen adaptation. I'd love to hear your take on this franchise. Let me know down in comments below how you would rank them. And make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know suggestions down below on future videos. Thank you for watching. Bye.